Hello, I'm Charlotte Stephenson. I'm an oil painter, and it's the 16th of November 2024, although it's basically midnight, so it's pretty much the 17th of November. What's my background? I was born in West Cumbria, which is in the very north of England, and I lived there for my whole life until I moved to Liverpool to study history at university, but I'm back in Cumbria at the moment. Cumbria is quite an insular place with a lot of small towns and villages and farmland and lakes and mountains. And it feels like quite a strange enclave that's quite detached from what's going on everywhere else. To an adult, the forests are very nice and interesting and beautiful, but as a kid, the feeling of it being quite myopic led me to spend a lot of time in my own imagination. I think where that comes into my art is that I just sought out anything very vibrant and colourful, because Cumbria felt quite small and oppressively grey. I always wanted for things to be just as fantastic as possible. I always kind of thought of life as a big movie, pictures and sounds and music. While local great artists like Sheila Fell and Percy Kelly really managed to carve something extraordinary out of the Cumbrian landscape that's really rooted in reality, I really turned towards fashion design and portraiture and fantasy maps and stories and interiors and just anything but the actual landscapes. Who are my biggest influences? In painting, I felt a very strong connection to Georgia O'Keeffe and Gustav Klimt, Percy Kelly, Edvard Munch, Van Gogh, and a lot of impressionists like, I don't know how to pronounce the name, Berthe Morisot, and some contemporaries as well, like Rebecca Gay, Ray Klein, Anna Weyant, Hayley Jo Summers. Sometimes it just seems to be the personality of the artist that enraptures me as much as the work. There's an old TV documentary of Georgia O'Keeffe that I just love to watch. And I feel just like her when I watch it, where she's out in New Mexico in that giant sunny landscape. And this year particularly, I've been really interested in O'Keeffe. I think it's just amazing what she was able to express in paint and line and colours. It's just fascinating, and her painting was so wildly authentic and uncompromising. And I like her ideas as well. She said that pursuing interest rather than happiness, which is quite fleeting, is the crucial thing in life. As a figurative painter, Gustav Klimt to me is just the gold standard. The sheer just abandon, excess imagination and sensuality just pulls you into this ethereal but fully fleshed out world. I think he was strangely able to truthfully portray female bodies in various states of maternity and age and decay and ecstasy, and his women are just shimmering and lively, and I definitely see his influence in modern painters like Rebecca Gay, and I just really dream of producing something that vibrant and lively and ornate. And outside of painters, I find a lot of inspiration from musicians. As a teenager, I was really interested in Kurt Cobain. I think he just completely captured my imagination and gave a voice to all the really difficult emotions I had and all the things I went through, and his music and writing and drawings were just such an important thing every day to me. And David Bowie is a big, just perpetual guiding star. I knew virtually nothing about him until I saw Brett Morgen's film Moon Age Daydream in 2022, and really it came along just at the right time for me. I think his songs and his work just taught me so much about even just what art is, and really how much about the world there is to be curious about. He is just absolutely huge to me. What are you focusing on right now? Well, right now I'm pretty busy planning some series that I'd like to exhibit in the new year. I've got just several themes and areas that seem quite inexhaustible, but certainly planning a lot more portraits. Recently, I've been quite drawn to painting interiors, which took me by surprise because I always really thought of myself as a portrait artist and didn't think that I was much good at buildings. And while I'm not really good at exteriors, I think interiors have had a real hold on me. And it's definitely something that could become a series, but by no means I haven't planned it that way. I just find such a psychological element in interiors being arranged by human hands, and particularly lamps, lights, any interesting behaviour of light on a nicely coloured wall just seems to interest me at the moment. I think overall what I'm interested in is building a good body of work. Patti Smith is another huge influence for me, and she kind of said that above all else, the work has to come first. Everything but the quality of the work will just fall away. And it only really occurred to me quite recently that unless I get these images on paint onto canvas, they just won't ever be seen. And I want to keep developing, keep producing, keep getting better at manipulating paint. What is the biggest challenge of being an artist? I think in general these are just very hard times. Politically things are very volatile. We're witnessing in real time, climate disaster, mass suffering and death in places like Congo, Palestine, Haiti, and here in the UK on an individual level, the cost of basic necessities just keeps rising, and employment is just such a huge problem for young people. And I think when you think of all of this and it weighs on you, and this creeping rise of fascism we're seeing, it's just so easy to become depressed, and as a bodily response it just feels natural. It can be difficult to create in the first place when you feel that way, and my art in itself is not motivated in an activist sense. In an entirely personal sense, I see it as an act of hope to paint or write. It's something to do with your own point of view. Like Georgia O'Keeffe said, it's making your unknown known. You have to be quite self-assured, but also prepared to make bad paintings or drawings. External validation doesn't always figure into it. If you can believe that your work is important, you just have to follow that through, and it's not easy, but that seems to affirm to me that it's working. I think painting itself is just a lifelong challenge. Like, you try to learn the basics and then you break your own rules, and then you try to learn the basics that you bypassed in the first place. I think that oil paints are so versatile that you could just develop forever, really. Like, the crossover of skill and technique and meaning is fascinating, that we can tell stories with pigmented liquids. What advice would you give to your younger self? Most things I don't feel that I could advise her on, because so much you just have to learn in your own time through living, but really I'd encourage myself to disregard practicality and just make art. Like, I could get quite paralysed in trying to figure out whether painting or music were good uses of my time, and they always were. And maybe I was worried that I wouldn't be great, or that artists weren't really that glamorous. I think many things about creativity I didn't yet understand, and I don't really have any regrets, but I had to find out that having my ideas, seeing pictures, that's one thing. Executing, developing skills in a visual language, that's another. And you can be great if you have the attitude and you seek constantly and you just work regardless of anything else in life. Have you ever tried any unconventional mediums or techniques? I have been told that I have a style, but perhaps unhelpfully I'm not really sure what it is. I'm not sure how to define convention, but certainly as I'm painting, I find myself avoiding anything that feels too familiar. My hands work by a logic that I don't really have a language for. I suppose on my most recent piece, I began with a Prussian blue underpainting, which is a very dark blue, and in the end it looks quite moonlit, even though the reference photo is quite light and airy and on a summer's day. I just have to follow my impulses and really respond to whatever I see as a painting is developing. Do you listen to music while you work? I do tend to listen to music, although occasionally I need silence. I know exactly which songs I want to listen to most of the time, but otherwise my default painting album is Mixed Up by The Cure. My mum had it in her painting room when I was growing up. I should mention she's a wonderful artist. But it's only really Lullaby and Close to Me that I remember from that time. It still works well to get me in a good state for painting. Something clubby is good sometimes as well. I just usually need something quite hyperactive or stop making sense by talking heads. That always works good too. What's the best reaction someone has had to your artwork? I am very lucky just to have very sweet friends. It's always appreciated when someone supports my work or encourages me. And I suppose if my mum thinks my paintings are good, that makes me pretty happy. Like I admire her work a lot, so I know this isn't just because she's my mum. Like we really take a big interest in what each other makes. What do you hope people take away from your artwork? Well, I think in just such a fast system that we're operating in, painting is just so inherently stubbornly slow. I think if I in any way encourage somebody to paint or even just stop and look at paintings, that would please me. Painting is just so much about seeing, and I'd like to think that I can show people how I see in my paintings. My paintings are just me, like I don't see any distance there. And yeah, I'd like to thank Stan for the interview, and my social media, my Instagram page is Charlotte Stephenson Art, all lowercase, no spaces. Thank you very much for this opportunity.